What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisant's podcast filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes so cold that they're boiling hot. Today's episode, we are going to be previewing the Mississippi State Bulldogs football program. Let's talk about the star players. On offense, there's not a lot to talk about, but Ethan Miner, a transfer from North Texas, is going to be the starting center, and I think he'll probably be the highlight of this team. On the defensive side of the football, we got Dontae Russell. He's a pretty good edge setter. I think he's going to get to the quarterback a few times this year. But let's go ahead and hop right directly into our first storyline. This Mississippi State team is completely devoid of talent. Starkville, Mississippi is not exactly a cash-rich town, and I think that you can see that evidence in recruiting and the transfer portal. Mississippi State has not done a good job at either of those things, and it's going to be pretty evident when the record comes to roost at the end of the year. The second thing I want to talk about, though, is this team is still in a tailspin from the tragic passing of Mike Leach. Under the Pirate, Mississippi State went from 4-7 in 2020 to 8-4 and eventually 9-4 in 2022. Unfortunately, Mike Leach passed away. It is such a tragic loss to all of college football and to obviously his family. Rest in peace. I think that Mississippi State has got a lot of room to recover. They fired their one-year head coach from last year, hired offensive mind Jeff Lebby. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes. This is my third talking point. A lot of offensive minds in his tree and in his experience, but we really haven't seen him take over somewhere, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. I think he's capable of turning around the offense, but this year, it's not going to be pretty. So now let's talk about the key losses for this Mississippi State program and then the key additions. On the losses side of things, Will Rogers, one of Mississippi State's probably better quarterbacks of their history, he transfers out to go to Washington to be the starter. He had an up and down career at Mississippi State. That 8-4 season, he played pretty dang well. He beat Ole Miss in that year, and that was very impressive. But then also Xavier Thomas, a wide receiver, transfers out. Those are two massive losses in production for Mississippi State. And to be honest, let's look at the additions because I don't know if they made up for that. Ethan Miner, I talked about, transfers in from North Texas. He's going to be heading up the offensive line. It's going to play a pivotal role in whether or not Mississippi State has an offense at all, basically. But Blake Shapen, quarterback from Baylor, I actually thought he wasn't that bad, especially in his last year. Suffered a couple of injuries and missed some games. But when he did play, he did not make a ton of mistakes. 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a fair completion percentage, not elite by any means, but he transfers in. I don't know what kind of offense this Mississippi State team is going to be able to run with the talent that they have, but if they're going to have a good season, expect Blake Shapen to be a game manager type quarterback. And then last but not least, in additions, wide receiver from Louisville, Kevin Coleman, never really had the stats to back up his talent, but I do think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in college football. I expect him to have a pretty good year, probably 800 to 900 yards. But those are the three additions. This Mississippi State team, like I've said before, is just lacking in the talent department, especially considering the fact that they're an SEC team. It's kind of like I was talking about with Arkansas. They're an average FBS team, but put them up against a Georgia, a Texas A&M, and Alabama, and they do not stack up at all. So last but not least, let's get into the record prediction, and it's not as bad as it really could be. Mississippi State here goes 4-8. Let's break it down. Eastern Kentucky, goodness gracious, we don't have to talk about this. FCS opponent, that's a win regardless of who it really is in the FBS. I give Mississippi State the win there. At Arizona State, now this one is a shocker to me. I have them winning this game. I think Arizona State is probably a year or two away from being a winning football program. And Mississippi State, like it or not, still better than the average football team. I think they win this game. Then they have Toledo at home, yet another win, a lower tier FBS opponent coming into your town. Mississippi State gets the win here. But then 5 straight losses versus Florida, at Texas, at Georgia, at home for Texas A&M, and then at home for Arkansas. I think Mississippi State drops all of these games. The only one that I could really see them winning is Arkansas at home, just because there's going to be a lot of noise in that Arkansas program about whether or not Sam Pittman is going to keep his job. I've said it before in a couple of these episodes, and I'll say it again. When your coach is talking about getting fired, especially now with NIL and the portal, extremely crucial to a locker room stability that your head coach knows that his job is safe. Here, Arkansas does not have that stability. They technically could, but I imagine at this point in the season they do not. And Mississippi State takes advantage of that. Or Mississippi State can't take advantage of that, however, and loses this game. But then they have their rebound homecoming versus Massachusetts. Another easy win, an FBS independent program who has never been elite by any means. So that's a win. Then at Tennessee versus Missouri, at Ole Miss. All three of those are losses. I could maybe see the Missouri the Missouri loss being a little competitive just because it's late in the season and maybe they're sleeping on Mississippi State. But to be honest, I don't think Mississippi State has the talent capacity to compete with an Auburn, let alone Missouri, Tennessee, or Ole Miss. So 3 losses to end the year. But you know what? A little promising because of Jeff Lebby. I think he can finally turn this offense around by the end of the year. Maybe keep a couple of these games competitive that we're not expecting him to. But 4-8 is my record prediction. We're going to be talking about Missouri next, guys. So be sure to tune into that episode. But thanks so much for watching this one. And stay tuned. We'll see you next time.